All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Today, I'm excited to jump into a new series and a exciting topic on biblical texts that have been excluded or quote unquote lost from the biblical compilation. And what we have recovered today through various findings. And I just want to dive into what these books talk about, because maybe that helps give us a better understanding on why they might have been removed or why they were excluded purposefully. And a big one that often comes up is the Gospel of Thomas. And that's what we're going to be diving into first and foremost. So I'm excited to, I didn't know he was going to be joining on screen, but I'm excited to be joined by my brother, Darth Vadris, who's a biblical scholar and a very wise man. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, so as I mentioned in the post, it's going to be a very simple, straightforward, just reading of this text. And then we're going to discuss each line as we go through it and just see what comes up. I will say that I have not read this whole text in full purposefully, because I wanted to have sort of a fresh perspective on each line as we go through it. And I'm hoping it helps to bring some insight and just, knock it off my list of reading so we can read it together. So it's a fun exercise to do. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot to discuss prior to getting into it, except for just maybe introducing the history of the findings of the Gospel of Thomas, and at least as far as I know. So this was discovered in the Nag Hammadi library. So this was a discovery of a bunch of scrolls, manuscripts found in I believe it was a wine preserving jar, and within it contained a myriad of ancient texts and scriptures that were somewhat mysterious to people who had been accustomed to the traditional compilation of the biblical text. And all of a sudden there were all of these other various forms of literature that seemed to add to it, but also contradict in a lot of ways to some of the things that we've been told by the church. So the Gospel of Thomas was one of these books, and in it is alleged to be the genuine words of Jesus Christ, or Ieshua, as he was known at the time. And it's the writings of the Apostle Thomas. So it's a very simple text. It doesn't go as the canonical Gospels. It doesn't go into the life of Jesus Christ. It doesn't go into the stories or the parables, really, even. It's very straightforward. Just these are some guidance. These are some principles. These are some wisdom teachings.
It's bare bones Jesus.
Bare bones. But the bare bones that's there is very powerful. At least from the things that I've read, and the impact that it's had on biblical scholars and people within that space is quite something, because while it is very much aligned with the Jesus Christ that we've known from the church's perspective, it's also quite contradictory as well. So as we go through each line and sort of unpack what was being said here, we can maybe start to identify why this book was removed. And if you're not familiar with that process, I believe this was one of the many books that was removed in the Council of Nicaea, which was one of the efforts of the power structure at the time to make the teachings of Ieshua and the writings and the wisdom that he was imparting, make them more docile and centralized, whereas the true teachings of Ieshua were all about self-empowerment and sovereignty. That doesn't sit well with a state that's trying to control people and push people together. So they had a very intentional meeting to not to, as they often laud, to improve the efficiency or leave only the good ones behind or whatever. It was really to only leave within the Bible that which was difficult to discern, and also leaning towards this narrative to be a docile, sort of subservient ward of the state, which is the true intent of those who seek to control. So yeah, this when we read this, it might make it more clear as to why this book was removed. So I'm excited to jump into it. And as I said, it's going to be very simple. We're just going to go through it line by line and discuss it and see what comes up. And if at any point somebody would like to jump into the discussion, have something they want to share, questions about the text or anything in that matter, as long as it's on topic, feel free to raise your hand and jump in, and we'll see if we can add to the discussion. And I don't know how far we're going to get today. I don't know how many episodes this is going to take to cover this book, but I do intend on continuing the series within other books that have been removed. And some of these books have been are known as the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Philip, the Book of Enoch, among many others that the Gospel of Judas, another controversial gospel. So we can certainly go into those as well, but we'll start with the Gospel of Thomas. And yeah, I think we'll just jump right into it. But I'll give you an opportunity. Did you have any sort of introductory words or thoughts on the Gospel of Thomas, or anything you want to share before we jump into the text?
No.
No? Great. All right. Well, I am going to share screen, and that way anyone watching will have a opportunity to follow along. If I can find. And I did include the book, the link to download the book that we will be reviewing that has this text. And why I chose this one, reading the foreword and introduction, it's clear that whoever compiled this, well, I guess we'll go ahead and give them credit and their name. So this was put together by Jean-Yves Leloup with a foreword by Jacob Needleman. So reading through the introduction and the foreword, I very much enjoyed their perspective. It seems like this is just a very honest representation of this book, and I'm not going to read through all of that here in this, but it seems like their intent was just to show this, present it as the likelihood that this is the direct teachings of Jesus Christ, and not put any sort of opinion or otherwise about it, really, which, there's a lot of controversy around this book within traditional church groups, because there is some information within that is contradictory to the traditional teachings of the church.
Okay, I've got something to add now.
All right.
So this is just going to happen. So it took a little bit of digging. Sometimes when you're going through these search engines, you got to rephrase questions because they're hiding the information. So the early church, when the Catholic Church was first being formed, they knew about the Gospel of Thomas. So it dates all the way back there to before the formation of the Catholic Church. And so they were, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 people that helped kill it and burn it from history. So the first one is Hippolytus. He identified the Gospel of Thomas, and he said it was fake and hearsay in a document that he wrote called Refutation of All Heresies. The next one is Origen, and he referred it as a heterodox and a homily. What does that even mean? We don't really use that word nowadays. So now I'm curious. What does that word mean? What's a heterodox? Like, if I called you that, is that a bad thing?
I don't know.
Okay. So heterodox refers to a belief or teaching that deviates from accepted orthodox doctrine. Okay, so That's just a fancy way of saying that this is not what we believe. Eusebius rejected it as absurd, impious, and heretical fiction. But when you read the Book of Thomas, it's fairly identical to the Bible with some very slight, dangerous differences, dangerous to centralized church. Cyril advised his followers to avoid the text as heretical, and Pope Gelasius included the Gospel of Thomas in his list of heretical books in the 5th century. So it was lost to the sands of time, and then it was rediscovered in 1945. So we knew, before 1945, we knew about the Gospel of Thomas. We just knew that it had existed at one time. We didn't currently have a copy, and that it was dangerous and heretical to the original church founding fathers. And then it came back out of the nether.
Yep.
So those are the guilty parties.
I always love when things are called heretical, because I mean, heresy is really just contradictory to the establishment. That's all heresy is. It's just and if you actually read the teachings of Jesus Christ, even in the canonized Bible, he's very heretical against the established order. He's consistently talking about how we're not here to worship the church or the synagogues. We're not here to just follow blind rules established by man. We're here to step in as the good, righteous children of God that we are, and take full responsibility and ownership of the process. So, of course, he's heretical, and anything that he did was very heretical, very contradictory to the establishment. And that's largely why so much effort has been put in place to neutralize his message, because it was very, very dangerous to the establishment and very empowering to people. So, yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, we'll just jump right into the reading itself. And one thing I wanted to note, that I like how this book also includes the original text as well. So that's just another, I believe it's Aramaic, it might be Greek, but just another sign that this is a very, very honest representation. They're not trying to hide anything. It just simply here's the text and here's their best translation of it. But if you feel like you want to double check their
language,
Coptic language, okay. If you feel like you want to double check their work, then feel free. So it's there. So here we go. These are the words of the secret. They were revealed by the living Ieshua. Didymus, Judas, Thomas wrote them down. Verse 1. Ieshua said, "Whoever lives the interpretation of these words will no longer taste death." So this is aligned with some other teachings in other books that he's said. However, this is much more explicit in that he's always talking about the everlasting life and the way, and following the way, and it's all about life. But this is very much explicitly saying that you won't die anymore, whoever lives the interpretation of these words. So whoever steps in as that Christed being, whoever steps in and follows this path, will no longer taste death. This is the path of the living. So that's a very powerful opening line to start out with. And even just from a interest perspective, it's a hook statement to be like, oh wow, okay, here's a book that's talking about immortality and the possibility of such. Let me keep reading and see what else it says. So going to verse 2, it says, Ieshua said, "Whoever searches must continue to search until they find." Ieshua said, "Whoever searches must continue to search until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed, and being disturbed, they will marvel and will reign over all." So what is this saying here? Whoever searches must continue to search until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed, and being disturbed, they will marvel and will reign over all. So this to me sounds like the Great Awakening, or it sounds like awakening in general, right? Whoever searches, whoever seeks, must continue to search. Once you begin that process of seeking, once you start asking those questions, once you start pulling back the curtain to see who's behind, you can't go back. You can't go back to I mean, you can try and put yourself back into willful ignorance, but once you know, you know. Once you've seen the dark the underbelly of society, you can't put that back in. So then it continues, when they find, they will be disturbed. Just how many of you, when you started asking questions and starting peeling away these layers, seeing, go ahead.
That second verse, because this is a single idea between the first verse and the second. So the first verse is saying that whoever lives the interpretation of these words will no longer taste death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the second verse is the words that have to be interpreted. Okay. And he's saying whoever searches must continue to search until they find. When they find, they'll be disturbed, and being disturbed, they will marvel and reign over all. So learning about the underbelly of deception and all of that doesn't necessarily grant you immortality. That doesn't necessarily bring you over death. So there is something that we're searching for, and when we find it, it's gonna disturb us. So it's gonna turn us inside out, and it's gonna disturb the entire world the way that we look at it. And then we're gonna go through a process of marveling at the changes, and then it's gonna reign over all. So to reign over all means that everything has been integrated into who you are. So when you find it, you go through a process of change where you no longer look at things and see these things as something outside of yourself, but that you see yourself in all things. And that is a disturbing process that you go through.
It's the death.
It breaks your sanity, and it is the death, and even life and death. What happens is that you reign over life and death also as well, and then you exist at a level above life and death, where it doesn't matter to you whether you are alive or dead, because you see through the illusion of both those states. So that's how I understand those verses. So it isn't not so much necessarily about the cabal or false religion or true religion. It's seeing through the illusion of even yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you realize that you're not, that your ego, that this thing that you're identifying with yourself, that it isn't even real with what you are identifying with.
Right.
And then if you release the ego, then there isn't anything left to actually die.
Right.
Because you're no longer associating yourself with even the ego or even your own body.
Right. Right. And so before you do that process of searching, you're in a sort of dead state. You haven't started this process. So once you start that process, you don't end it. You don't stop the process until you reach that state where you're like, oh wow, this old identity, whatever I had built prior to that was built on nothing, on whatever sort of deception, self-imposed or collectively based, it doesn't matter. That has to go, and that's the disturbance, that's the storm. And as Jesus talked about in other parables, the building your house on the solid rock or the sand, the disturbance is the storm. And when the storm comes along, the only things that remain are the solid rocks, the truth.
Right. It also disturbs your map of the world. So everyone has a map. They have a tradition of how they see reality around them. Where am I? Who am I? What am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? Where have I come from? And when you're searching for the answer of, like, what is death? Where did I come from? How did I get here? How do I conquer death? When you finally discover the answer to that, it destroys the map. Like your entire map comes crumbling down, and you're given a new map, a new way of perceiving everything around you. And the new perception is marvelous. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to be, because your original map, you start out in hell. That's where everyone is. Everyone is running away from pain, and they're trying to get to some sort of pleasure. But once you transcend pain and pleasure, life and death, you're in a completely new place. You're no longer in hell. Now you're in heaven. And heaven is marvelous. And in heaven, everything is subject. Nothing dominates you, but rather you dominate everything around you by rising above it. And everything around you is your dominion.
Yep. That's sovereignty.
Yeah.
Sovereignty is S over reign. So they will marvel and will reign over all. When you step in as that S, the Kundalini, that energy, that Christed energy rising, then you do reign over all, not as if all is as subservient to you, but connected with. You are staying in as that focalized point of consciousness, and therefore you have that responsibility to act as that representative of goodness, of God, and that's the reigning over all that we step into, following this Christ path.
Also, because everyone is the center of their own world. Okay, so yes, the earth is the center of reality, but the man that is walking in the earth is the center of his own reality. And so everything that exists in his reality is subject to that divine Christic essence within him. And so when you discover that divine Christic essence within yourself, then everything in your world, not the world, in your world, is subject to what you've unified yourself with. It's so like I could see it right now. So I'm one of the founding church fathers, and I'm trying to set up this massive edifice of I'm trying to separate man from God. I cannot let man and God unite, because I'm trying to build a church. I'm trying to build a massive religion, a massive conglomeration of power, right? And so I got to decide which ancient books I'm going to allow the masses to read and which ones I'm not. And so I open up the Gospel of Thomas and I read this first verse. I'm like, yeah, no, because these people need to be afraid of death.
Yep.
Because this is the primary method. I'm going to make everyone terrified of death, because you might go to hell if you die.
Death cult.
And right here it says that whoever lives, so whoever follows the instructions, the interpretation of these words, will no longer taste death. Yeah, I can't allow anyone to have this. And then it says that whoever searches must continue the search until they find. When they find, they're going to be disturbed. When they're disturbed, they're going to marvel and reign over all. No, I want to reign over them. I don't want anyone to have sovereignty. I want sovereignty over everyone. No, I can't allow them to have. Right here in this first verse, they're like, yeah, no, this is a bad book for the Catholic Church. It would, if the people had this, the Catholic Church wouldn't have survived its first day.
No.
And we're just 2 verses in. What is going to be in verse 3?
Yeah. All right. So moving to verse 3. Ieshua said, "If those who guide you say, 'Look, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds are closer than you. If they say, 'Look, it is in the sea,' then the fish already know it. The kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you. When you know yourself, then you will be known. And when you know that you are the child of the living Father, and you will know that you are the child of the living Father. But if you do not know yourself, you will live in vain, and you will be vanity."
Jeez. Yeah,
So,
no, people can't be allowed to have this.
Another very powerful, just very simple, laid out there for you. Hey, if people are telling you look for heaven elsewhere. Maybe, hint hint, those church people, if they're telling you that heaven is on some far off distant, you know planet, some far off distant space, and you'll never get there except for maybe if you pay them, and if you pledge your allegiance and all of that. But to take those kind of lies and dissect them right at the beginning, and then clearly say this, because he said it before, how the kingdom of heaven is within you, but this is like the kingdom is inside you, and it's like not even trying to throw a parable or an allegory about it. It just is. When you know yourself, then you will be known, and you will know that you are the child of the living Father. When you know yourself, then you will be known. So if you knowing yourself, and then you will be known, then now you're starting to merge this idea that we are an aspect of the same energy that we call God. The living Father in this is simply the highest version of that, the highest divine quality. So we are a step down version of that, necessary to have this experience. But we're here to know thyself, to know ourselves as that creative essence. But if you do not know yourself, you will live in vain, and you will be vanity. As in, you will only be focused on the material things. How I mean, you don't have to look any further than look at the freaking Pope and all the gold and lavish things and all the outward showing of riches and wealth that they have in the Vatican, to show that what is vanity? What does vanity look like? So they couldn't have something like this coming across people's consciousness, because then all of a sudden people are going to question, well, why are you so consumed with your material goods and how you present yourself? Now, I want to make a disclaimer, because often people confuse this into thinking that you have to take a vow of poverty in order to be a spiritual person. No, it doesn't mean that material things are bad, but it's, where is your focus? Is the material your God? Is that your false idol? Is money your false idol, or possessions your false idol? That's vanity. But if you know the kingdom of heaven is inside you, then then you're going to take care of your temple, and you're not going to be so consumed with the material external possessions and things of that nature. So a very, very powerful line as well.
I could just see some of the ancient bishops, finding this text. I mean, like, we can't allow the people to have this. Then they're going to be like, we can't allow ourselves to have this.
Yeah.
Like, great. Now we have to torture ourselves to death for seeing this till we forget.
Yeah. I mean, this would be dangerous even in clergy, even within the church, because it starts having people question their livelihood or their.
Do we have time for a little side quest?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is here's a story. This third verse reminds me of a story out of Hindu mythology. I'll read it. It's a short paragraph. There was a time when all human beings were gods, but they abused their divinity. So Brahma, the chief god, decided to take the divinity away from them and hide it somewhere they could never find it. Brahma called a council of the gods to help him decide where to hide the divinity. Let's bury it deep in the earth, said the gods. But Brahma answered, humans will dig into the earth and find it. Some gods suggested, let's sink it in the deepest ocean. But Brahma said, no, humans will learn to dive into the ocean and will find it. Then some gods suggested, let's take it to the top of the highest mountain and hide it there. Brahma replied, humans will climb up every mountain. Then all the gods gave up and said, we do not know where to hide it, because it seems that there is no place on earth or ocean that human beings will not eventually reach. Brahma thought for a long time and said, we will hide their divinity deep into the center of their own being. Humans will search for it here and there, but they won't look for the divinity inside their true selves. All the gods agreed that this was the perfect hiding place, and the deed was done. And since then, humans have been going up and down the earth, digging, diving, climbing, and exploring, searching for something which already lies within themselves.
Yep.
So this concept that the kingdom is in your midst, and that if you want to know the Father, you have to learn to know yourself, and that until you know yourself, everything you do is just useless because you don't really know what it is you're doing, and you can't see what you're doing because you're blind to the true nature of yourself and the Father. So this concept is in every ancient true spirituality, but then whenever they set up a system, they always hide this,
Right.
because with this knowledge, it destroys the need for any church or anyone else other than yourself.
Yeah. Any centralized authority not based on goodness cannot exist when everyone knows that they are connected to that God goodness.
Now this scripture, though this scripture is found in traditional Bibles, but the context is different. They've slightly altered the trajectory, and the way that most modern Christians believe this scripture. See, what they removed is where it says the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds are closer than you. If they say, look, it's in the sea, then the fish already know it. So they've removed that part because that's the part that's the context about the actual physical location of the kingdom. They've taken that out of the regular Bible. You won't find that. What they find is that Jesus was Christ is saying, oh, the kingdom is already in your midst, and to search for it while it's here, which implies that someday it's not going to be here. So Christians believe that Christ was saying this because he was going to be there, and then he was going to die and be taken up to heaven, and then the kingdom would no longer be in their midst, and it would return sometime in the distant future. So you can see how then all of a sudden everyone would stop looking for the divinity within themselves because they're waiting for the divine to come back sometime in the future. And that's how they do that little magic trick, and they steal your divinity from you.
Yep.
That is a mean thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the only way that they can get away with controlling people to that extent. How do you convince God that it's not God? So we'll continue on to verse 4. Ieshua said, an aged person will not hesitate to ask a 7-day-old infant about the place of life, and that person will live. Many of the first will make themselves last, and they will become one. So this is sort of, this is pointing out the connectedness of all, of all of creation. So an aged person will not hesitate to ask a 7-day-old infant about the place of life, and that person will live. So that portion is lauding the wisdom of children and how they are coming from this connected space. I mean, they incarnating into this realm, they have just left the knowingness of the Creator. So we would be wise to honor children in what they come to bring us, because they're the greatest source of that pure connected nature. Did you have something?
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying. I don't want to cut you off. A 7-day-old infant has no ego yet.
Yeah.
They do understand that they are a self. Okay, so they do have some identity, but they don't have a sense of sin or deficiency. There's no 7-year-old child that thinks that there's something wrong with them because they haven't been taught that yet. And there's no 7-day-old infant that is aware of class status. There's no 7-day-old infant that has any comprehension that what you need won't arrive. All they know is that there's a mother, and that when they're hungry, the mother is there. And it would never occur to an infant that what is needed is not going to show up, right? And so when we're trying to move forward, or we're trying to say, well, what should be my spiritual profile? Okay, what direction should I move? How should I move forward? We should move forward like that 7-day infant, where we're not condemning ourselves as a sinner. Okay, we're not riddled with guilt or riddled with fear about the future. There's no baby that's afraid of the future. Okay, the baby has faith and trust that the mother is going to be there to nurture and to care and to love. So when Ieshua was saying to ask a 7-day-old infant about the place of life, it's kind of like in Proverbs when it says to inquire of the ants. Okay, so it's about a nature. So faith is what preserves the soul alive, and so when we have faith like a baby has faith, no doubt, then life springs eternal, because there's no end to the faith and there's no end to the life that the faith brings.
Yeah.
So it says that many of the first will make themselves last, and then they'll become one. I'm not sure of the exact interpretation of what the original Book of Thomas meant there.
I've got an idea on that one. So many of the first will make themselves last, and they will become one. I'm struggling to find the name of this image, but perhaps y'all know what I'm talking about, of the man who's curled backwards to where his heels begin to reach his head. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know.
And that can be related to the 12 zodiac, where Aries the head and Pisces the feet. And we're here to connect these two. So Pisces or Aries begins the process going down to the feet, and then it's supposed to bring the process around again. So the Bible, even though the control structure who dissected the Bible, they don't really know how to read it and all the layers that it has, still has an incredible amount of astrological truth within it. So I'd imagine this text would also have that same allusions to the fact that the stars, the story of man, the journey of man is always described, and many of the first will make themselves last, and they will become one. So we start at the beginning and we go to the end. We go from Aries to Pisces, and then to create the union between these two means that we've defeated death, because we have completed the loop. We've completed the loop of needing to go through an actual death, and you're just entering into that process. So you are renewing oneself, taking the renewed wisdom of the completion, the completed Pisces, but stepping back into Aries, the ram, and moving forward with that. So that's one thing that I see from that.
I figured it out. Okay, so this is a single idea. So he's saying that an aged person will not hesitate to ask a baby about the place of life, and that person will live. That's what he's saying, right? So then he's describing that process. So many of the first, why are they first? Because they're older. They came here. So when he says many of the first, he's talking about the aged person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And he says they will make themselves last. So what does it mean to make yourself last? Well, the themselves is your ego. So you're taking your ego and you're putting your ego last.
Humility.
Yeah, you're separating yourself, and then in the process of putting your ego last and having humility, like the baby, then you become one. So before they implemented what the baby told them to do, they weren't one.
Mm-hmm.
But then when looking at the baby, they become like the baby, they achieve atonement, and then they become one.
Yeah.
So he's describing the success and process of following the way that is shown by the 7-day infant.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Santos Bonacci has often said that in order for Scripture to really, most Scripture has somewhere around like 7 meanings and interpretations built within it, and so yeah, I think that's very, very valid for what that might that's a simple way of seeing, like, yes, those who, it doesn't mean because you're older, or you've lived here in this lifetime longer, to have that take over and take away your ability to be humble and recognize when somebody who could be younger, even the 7-day-old infant, um, would have more wisdom on a particular thing. And 7, like, they like to throw the numbers in there for significant reasons as well. And 7 is the 7 chakras. So that would be an activated, fully Christed being, even if it is an infant.
A divinely old infant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So full of timeless wisdom.
Yeah.
Now Christendom, so there's scriptures in the traditional Bibles about becoming like children. However, Christendom applies that as you should be naive like a child. You should be teachable like a child. So a child is easy to fool sometimes, because the child has no experience with deception and with malice. So it never occurs to the child that we would be trying to con it, right? So Christendom wants full-grown men to eternally be children, so that they can be easily misled. So that's the first part of how Christendom views that scripture of becoming like a child. And the second part, where it says, because many of the first will make themselves last. Okay, so that's also in a regular Bible, but the application that Christendom applies to it is the order of the resurrection. So the last people to be alive would be the first people to be resurrected. They say the resurrection occurs in reverse into paradise. But clearly that was not what because the book of the Gospel of Thomas that's not in the context at all.
No. I think this is a more simple. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to the next verse. So verse 5, Ieshua said, "Recognize what is in front of you, and what is hidden from you will be revealed. There's nothing hidden that will not be revealed." So I see this as, don't let, like in Matthew chapter 6, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks and says, "Take no thought for your life." And it doesn't mean that we can't have thoughts, but I see that as sort of like in alignment with this, of if we're constantly distracted by the wandering thoughts that are taking us in all sorts of different directions, worrying about this, being anxious about that, overthinking, overanalyzing, all of that, we're stepping away from wherever the divine is leading us in that particular moment, which is in the here and now. So if we're worried about the past or the future or whatever, then we're not here in the present. Recognize what is in front of you. Recognize what is in this here and now. And what is hidden from you will be revealed. There's nothing hidden that will not be revealed. So that's the sort of assurance of having that faith and taking that leap of faith in the path forward, not straying, not going down the winding dead-end cul-de-sacs, but staying on that straight and narrow path, staying straight forward. And even if we don't know, because we won't know what is in front of us, that's the fun of it and the faith of having, so we can continue stepping forward. So I see that as just that, the leap of faith, and continuing to put one foot in front of the other and stay here in the present. What do you see?
Ieshua said, "Recognize what is in front of you, and what is hidden from you will be revealed. There is nothing hidden that will not be revealed." So what's in front of us is ourselves. And once we realize that we are what's confronting ourselves, because the world is reflecting back at us our own nature. So if we are a brutal person, then what will confront us is brutality. If we're kind and generous, what will be in front of us is kindness and generosity. So what's in front of us is the vision of our own nature. If we have no faith and we're acting out of absence, then what will be in front of us is absence and disaster and shortfall. So so once we recognize that what we're seeing is a mirror of our own nature and our own state of faith, then all of a sudden we can control what we see by controlling our own nature. And then everything gets revealed because we know what it is that we're actually seeing.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, even from the modern scientific viewpoint, the world around us isn't even real. It doesn't exist until it's measured or it's observed. That's why we say, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there, does it make a sound? So and it looks as though the outside world is real, and on the macro scale and from our human senses, we play a game of catch and we're throwing the ball back and forth. And it looks like it's a single ball. It looks like it's real. But if you get very, very precise and you measure that ball very, very accurately, you realize that it's not actually there, because you can't tell the position and the velocity at the same time. You have to pick one. And then you realize that it acts differently, whether or not, depending on whether someone's watching it or not. So is it even there? What's real? The only thing that's real is the experience. But the experience is determined by your nature. Someone who has faith and appreciation and gratitude is going to have a completely different experience than someone that doesn't have any faith, doesn't have any gratitude, is afraid. So what is it that we're really looking at? We're looking at our own nature. And once we realize that, then everything around us is just naked.
Right. I like that. Yeah, so verse 6, it says, his disciples questioned him, should we fast? How should we pray? How should we give alms? What rules of diet should we follow? Ieshua said, stop lying. Do not do that which is against your love. You are naked before heaven. What you hide will be revealed. Whatever is veiled will be unveiled. So he didn't get into any of the specifics on the questions, just very simply, stop lying. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to other people. And it doesn't matter if you're lying to yourself or lying to other people, it all will be revealed. There's nothing that consciousness, this experience, doesn't know, because you are a part of that. You are that. So the more we try and hide from ourselves or hide from other people, we're stepping out of alignment. And just like a river that's winding, it's not going to flow nearly as fast or efficiently when it's winding all around, because it's not aligned. But you straighten that waterway, all of a sudden that water flows much faster and efficiently. So that stream of consciousness is able to flow through your vehicle in a much more efficient manner when everything is in alignment. And alignment comes from the thoughts, the actions, and the words. So if your words are not aligned with your thoughts, or they're not aligned with your actions, then there's incongruency within you, whether it's what you're telling yourself or what you're telling other people, or thinking about yourself or thinking about other people. If there's not an alignment with your entire behavior, everything that you're doing, your whole being, then you're incongruent, and you will not be able to flow. So he's just said, simply stop lying. Very simple.
So some historical context to this question. So the descendants of Abraham, the Hebrews, their entire culture and religion had been captured by the Jews, and or the residents of Judea that were actually Canaanites, and they had replaced the spirituality of the Hebrew traditions with rules after rule after rule, and they had invalidated the law of Moses, which was to take care of orphans and widows, and to help and to love your neighbor. That was the whole sum of the law of Moses. But they had invalidated the law of Moses with their traditions. And And then Christ came and was disrupting all of this, the religion. And so when his disciples questioning him, should we fast? How should we pray? They're asking, what sort of religion should we set up? Okay, because there was already a religion there, and now Christ is deviating from that religion. So they couldn't even understand the concept of letting go of all religion and going with pure spirituality, and that traditions are fine, but it's not the traditions that save you, it's the faith and the love. So when they start asking, well, what sort of church should we set up, then Ieshua says, stop lying, because religion by definition is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And setting up a strict, rigid church with rules it's a lie, because you can follow all the laws of a religion and still be a terrible person. You could be a good Christian on paper and not have any law of Christ in your heart. So that's why he says, stop lying and do not do which is against your love, or do not act against the love that's in your heart. And then he says that you're naked before heaven. What you hide will be revealed, and what is veiled will be unveiled. So you can't hide from yourselves. Everything that you do, there you are. Everything that you do, you see all the things that you're doing. And the Christ that is within you, the divinity that is within you, is watching you through your own eyes. So it doesn't matter if you set up a definition, because that's what it is. Should we fast? Should we pray? So they're asking, well, what sort of definition should we make for goodness? And then Jesus is saying, stop lying. All definitions of goodness, all definitions of love are false. So do not act against goodness. Do not act against love, because there's no way to hide from goodness, and there's no way to hide from love.
Yeah, beautifully so.
This book should be just mandatory reading for everyone.
Agreed.
Just over and over again. It's so concentrated. It's like the pure words of Christ, just concentrated down to their like laser-like focus. Every verse, nothing wasted.
Yeah, no fluff. I mean, imagine how because I mean, you think about the Bible and it's already a daunting thing because it's so massive and convoluted and so much stuff. And
but by design.
Yes, by design. So imagine if you had this as a book that people could reference, and not that we need to treat this as another idol to worship, that we don't need to worship any book, any writing, but the aim of these texts was to bring you back to yourself, and it's doing that in a very impactful, very quick way. I mean, we've been going for a little bit talking about it, but if you're just reading this to digest and move through it, it's very palatable, very easy, and the language isn't convoluted or strange.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So verse 7, Ieshua said, fortunate is the lion eaten by a human, for lion becomes human. Unfortunate is the human eaten by a lion, for human becomes lion. So here we go for maybe the first little parable or allegory to give a little brain teaser in here. Fortunate is the lion eaten by a human, for lion becomes human. Unfortunate is the human eaten by a lion, for human becomes lion. So perhaps this is saying, do you have...
It's the opposite of you are what you eat.
Yeah, so I'm viewing it as the path of the beast and the path of man. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to fit here. Fortunate is the lion is the beast eaten by a human. So when man in its divine form defeats the beast, it gives the beast opportunity to become man. Unfortunate is when the man becomes conquered by the beast, because then man becomes beast. So perhaps it's simply establishing the hierarchy of spirituality, in the sense that the beast is instinct, or that sort of lower form of consciousness. Still here, still relevant, still necessary, but it's subservient to man as an elevated form of consciousness. What do you think about that?
I think that what he's saying here is that if we become consumed by rules, that then we become the rules. But if we dominate the rules, that because the goodness lies. Okay, I was having this conversation about, like, so someone was saying that they were referring to a priest within a very specific cult religion, and they were saying, but this priest is a good guy. And I was saying, no, I said that's impossible. There are good guys. There's a good people that happen to be priests, but there are no priests that are good people within reference of this cult. And I said the reason why is because everything that's good comes from being a man or a human. Okay? Because being a man is the highest form of divinity. But to define yourself as a priest, well, the priest is a perversion of the man. So if you're defining something as a man, then yes, there can be a man who happens to be a priest and he's still a good man, right? Despite the fact that the priest is the priest aspect is trying to pervert the quality of divinity within him. But to define something as a priest within the cult, well, that's just bad. So this verse here, 7, is connected to verse 6. It's a continuation of the idea that if you are eaten by the dead religion, then you become dead. But if the traditions are eaten by you, then they become alive because you're alive. So the scripture is about integration. If we're at war with the traditions, okay, so we create the traditions. Well, first the traditions create us because we're born into them, and then we have to decide: am I going to continue with this tradition, or am I going to leave this tradition, or am I going to change? Am I going to go to war with this tradition and kill it within myself and leave it, and then take on a different tradition, a better one, or am I going to succumb to it? Right. So I grew up in a cult, and I came of age, and I had to decide: am I going to leave the dead stone walls of this tradition? Am I going to leave this dead church with no love in it? Am I going to leave and escape it? Now, it took a long time. For a long time, it dominated me, and it for various reasons. You know, I had family and children and all that other jazz that makes it harder to leave, right? And so for a while, even though in the back of my mind I realized it was a dead religion, it animated part of my actions. But eventually, I conquered it. So I still have traditions. I still have programming within me, because I need that in order to function in this world. But when you dominate the law, then you give life to the law. But when the law dominates you, well, the law is dead and it kills you. So I think that's what he's talking about. He's talking about hierarchies and integration, because it's a continuation of the thought about what religion should we form and what rules should we follow. So it's we see this also. This is right here. This is the key, the solution to modern Western civilization and the problem of legalism. Because what's happened is that we've created a legal structure, and now the legal structure is over us and it's captured us, and now we're enslaved to the legal structure. And then if there's something that needs to be done, well, we can't do it because the legalism doesn't allow us.
Right.
And yet we do need law because we can't function without it. We have to have as a man, part of being a man is that you have a personal code. Okay. I help women cross the street, right? I open a door for a lady, right? That's a personal code. And yet I'm not enslaved by that code.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a continuation of of his disciples questioning what rules of diet should we follow, and then he's saying, well, do not worship the rules.
Right. Yeah. That
Does
makes
that does
sense.
that make sense?
Yeah. Totally.
Okay.
Totally makes sense.
I'm it's weird. So I'm asking. So at first, we read the verse, and I'm like, oh, this is very peculiar. It's the opposite of you are what you eat. And then I stop, and I'm like, I have to ask myself, why did I say this? Why would I write this? What did I mean when I spoke this?
Right.
And then I go back and I envision myself like I'm the one there.
Yep.
Okay. And then in asking the question, you automatically arrive at the destination.
Yep.
That's part of decoding this thing is you have to become the Christ. You're the one that said this. The wisdom was within you, and then it unlocks the door within you.
Right. Right. All right. So verse 8 says, Ieshua said, a human being is like a good fisherman who casts his net into the sea. When he pulls it out, he finds a multitude of little fish. Among them there is one fine large fish. Without hesitation, he keeps it and throws all the small fish back into the seas. Those who have ears, let them hear. So he ends the parable with those who have ears, let them hear, because that's why he often spoke in parables. And anyone who follows the Christed path will often find themselves in spaces where you've got to, the things you say are not always fitting for everyone to hear. So there's got to be ways to get the message out to whoever needs to hear it at whatever level they are. So this one, I see it as when we're a good fisherman, we're casting our net into the sea, casting our net to the right, so acting through that righteous side, hopefully. But even if we're not, we're casting our net out there. We can cast our net to the left, into the left brain, if we have the analytics, the logic, like there's nothing wrong with that either. We're going to get all these fish, all these thoughts, all these things come through. The stream of consciousness will be full. And we can all relate to that, of having many thoughts about lots of things and go this way or that way and whatever. But the more that I refine myself, the more that I'm going to be able to distinguish that one fine large fish that's there. And that's the message that the divine is really trying to get through. That's the message that's got the most oomph, most energy behind it, because that's the way that consciousness is guiding me. That's the way that God is leading me. So when I get good at this process of identifying the one fine large fish, then I don't have to get so confused or spend so much time among the multitude of other fish that I might capture the other thoughts that I have. And I can then focus on just separating, getting that one large fish, having that direction of what's the next step to go. Where is this fishing expedition taking me? And continue, cast my net out again. And then this process just repeats. It continues in that way. So, without hesitation, he keeps it and throws all the small fish back into the sea. So there it's talking about attachment. Don't be attached to all the other things. Like, we don't have to plan every minute little detail out either, because the divine's going to lead us where it needs to. So that's what I see in this one, is just that refining process, getting good at weeding through all the thoughts and distinguishing to that one point where that's the highest space to go. So yeah, that's what I see there.
Agreed.
All right, and then verse 9, Ieshua said, once a sower went out and sowed a handful of seeds. Some fell on the road and were eaten by birds. Some fell among the thorns, which smothered their growth, and the worms devoured them. Some fell among the rocks and could not take root. Others fell on fertile ground, and their fruits grew up toward heaven. They produced 60 and 120 units per measure. They produced 60 and 120 units of measures.
It's because he's using Babylonian methods of counting. They counted in terms of 30, 60, 90, 120, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but there's probably also something coded in the numbers too.
I was thinking about that as well.
Yeah, they produced 60 and 120. So 612, 60, 60, and then 120. So 60 and 120.
180.
Right, if you add them, but I'm just saying, like, if you're just looking at the numbers as they're showing up, 612, if you drop all the zeros, could be something, or 180, which is, add those up, it's another 9. So 9 is a powerful number. 9's divine. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's being pointed at in the number, but the message is clear. And he gave the same speech in some of the other gospels as well, about planting seeds. This is just a very concise version of it. So some fell casting seeds, some fell on the road and were eaten by birds, some fell among the thorns and worms devoured them, some fell among the rocks and didn't grow, and then others fell on fertile ground and their fruits grew up toward the heaven.
Well, okay, so if we're looking for some sort of secondary spiritual meaning, to do a 180 is to turn around.
Yeah.
It's repentance.
Yeah.
So it's a complete reversal.
Yeah. Could be that.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. So the 180, the turnaround.
I think it's interesting that
because that's what when a seed starts to sprout, it's, I mean, we when we talk about planting seeds and receiving that, having that influence from that seed beginning to grow, or when somebody has like a seed of truth begin to grow within them, it could be years down the road from when that seed was planted, but when it starts to grow, that is the 180, right? Because that person is now starting to let that seed of truth grow within them. So that is a turnaround from where they were before. So yeah, they produced 180 units per measure, 180 degree turnaround when the seed starts to grow. So yeah, I like that. Anything else on that one?
Nope.
So verse 10, Ieshua said, I have sown fire upon the world, and now I tend it to a blaze. So he is the baptism of fire, the cleansing of the consciousness, to burn away the lies and leave nothing but the truth. So that's pretty straightforward. Fire is often associated with the Christic energy. So I think that's pretty straightforward.
Well, also, the Christian faith destroyed the Rome.
Yeah.
The Cabal at that time.
Yeah. That's why they killed him like a terrorist, or tried to, wanted to, because he was a threat to the entire establishment. So verse 11, Ieshua said, this sky will pass away, and the one above it will also pass away. The dead have no life, and the living have no death. On days when you ate what was dead, you made it alive. When you are in the light, what will you do? When you are one, you created two. But now that you are two, what will you do? So this is kind of, I see this as looking at the big picture of how we came into this space and this experience, especially at the end. When you were in the light, what will you do? When you were one, you created two, but now that you are two, what will you do?
They didn't even try to answer it. Well, maybe they did, and they just didn't talk about it. But the next verse, they just changed the subject.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's saying that, all that is material, all that is visible is temporary. There is nothing permanent about this experience. The dead have no life, and the living have no death, because it's one and the same. On days when you ate what was dead, you made it alive. When you are in the light, what will you do? So we're in this process of, we've fallen into darkness. When you were one, you created two, as in we were unified, harmonious together, but somewhere along the way we decided to manifest an experience where we forgot that we were one and we created two. But now you're two, what will you do? So now that we are in this seemingly individualized experience, what will we do with it? Yeah. So I see that it's just a very a very deep philosophical question posed. You got anything else there?
Um, well, I think that so when it's interesting here that he just says that the sky will pass away, but he doesn't mention the earth. And then he says the one above it will also pass away, which is really could be considered a real heretical, blasphemous thing to say. You're telling me that God's going to die and that heaven's going to pass away. But what I feel like he was saying here is that the heaven is what creates, the invisible realm is what creates what we see in the physical realm, but it's really just our understanding of it. So the way that we see heaven, the way that we see the sky, our systems that we use now, our opinions, our traditions, those are all going to pass away. And our understanding of God and how we see God, that's going to pass away too. And then he immediately goes into death, because death is what, we forget or we remember. It depends how you look at it. So when you die, you forget what happened while you were living or the life before, and then you're born into a new life and you have no memory of the life that came before. And so he's talking about the division between life and death, but then he's riddling that we're all just the source anyway. So we eat something that's dead and we make it alive. It's having to do that we create our perception of the living spirit, but we're on the other side of the veil. With our physical senses, we cannot see the living spirit. We can't see our true living self. And so he's asking them, okay, so you were the one, but now you're not the one. You are now the two. You've separated yourself from the one. And now that you have separated yourself from the one, what are you going to do? So we're having this conversation about religion. This is all just one sort of conversation. And we're having this conversation about religion and systems and hierarchies and being dominated by your view of what's true, being dominated about whatever your code is, right? And so he's saying that opinions of God pass away, opinions of heaven pass away because of death, right? Whole cultures die, right? For example, we live in the United States right now. The United States did not always exist, right? There was another culture here before the United States. Where is it? It's gone. It died, right? And in the United States, one day, this whole Western culture is going to pass away. Time eats everything, right? It's the one thing that wins. And so once that culture passes away, what's going to come next? What's going to be the next vision of heaven? What's going to be the next vision of God? These are deep, deep metaphorical questions that he's asking.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's saying, you used to be God, you used to be the one, and then you separated yourself from yourself. And now there's two things. There's God and there's the creator and the creation. And now that you're in the form of the creation, well, what are you going to do? It's a really deep question. And they don't answer it in the text.
No.
But I'm sure they probably thought about it for the rest of their lives.
Probably.
What are we going to do? Because he was also saying, once you understand what it is that you're seeing in front of you, everything is naked. And you fall back into yourself, you realize that, oh, I am God. I am the creator. I am just the one. And I'm having a vision of myself, of my own nature.
Which is disturbing at first as the first.
Yeah, very disturbing. I remember that moment. It was.
And that's why he just said, I have sown fire upon the world and now I tend it to ablaze. It's
Yeah.
questions like this, ideas like this that are presented, that's the blaze, that's the fire.
I do think this might be the most dangerous document ever written. Because a document like this, like if many, many people understood it, it would bring religions down, it would bring states down.
Yep.
It's even more dangerous than the Declaration of Independence.
Yep.
And they hate that one too.
Yep. All right, then verse 12, the disciples said to Ieshua, we know that you will leave us. Who will be great among us then?
Jeez. He just told them not to start a religion.
Ieshua told them, when you find yourselves at that point, go to James the Just. All that concerns heaven and earth is his domain. So, I just got a little, this refers, well, the author says this refers to James, i.e. Jacob, the brother of Ieshua. Perhaps it's referring to him. Or is he just referring to justice itself? You know, this inherent fundamental energy within creation. If we let justice reign over the physical, then this is an ideal that doesn't require any centralized figure. It's an energy that lives within us. So it's possible.
Or perhaps the document's been tampered with and rehidden.
Perhaps the document has been tampered with.
They do that a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look what I found. Here, let me tamper with it, put it back so that, 500 years from now, someone's going to find it. And we can start a church called James the Just.
Yeah.
These people are devious.
It's possible, but
it's possible.
And that's where it's good to read all of any text with a discerning eye, not just inherently that like, oh, because somebody proclaimed it as the word of Jesus or the Bible or whatever. It's like, you weren't there. You didn't hear it come out of his mouth. And it's, when we have that filter, then we can kind of pick apart. It's like, okay, well, here's some contradictions here. He just gave the breakdown that we're not here to create religions or define control structures and all of that in the ways that he's saying, but then we're to believe that he's pointing to one man and saying all that concerns heaven and earth is his domain. That doesn't fit. Ieshua wouldn't say that one singular man would have that. But if we are looking at this from an energetic standpoint, if he's referring to justice as a whole, then that might be more valid to say that all that concerns heaven and earth is his domain if it's under justice, Jupiter.
I think what's realistically more likely, though I was being somewhat facetious about the document being tampered with, though that has been known to happen. But I think what's more likely is that his brother was also trained in the Gnostic arts and was also initiated into the same organization that Ieshua was initiated into. And so he was saying, listen, just ask my brother. He understands all these things. He understands heaven. He understands earth. He's also initiated. He's also a Christic figure, because Christ didn't want a bunch of people like him. He wanted a bunch of people to be him, because he was saying that him and the Father were one, and that everyone should be one the same way that I am one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's likely that he was referring to his brother as being, listen, he's also initiated.
Yeah.
So after I'm gone, he'll help you with the rest of my teachings.
Sure. Yeah, that would fit.
I mean, if I knew something was going to happen to me, I'd be like, listen, go to Justin. He knows. He has everything I've ever written. He has my hard drive. Go to Justin. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Giving another teacher.
Right. Because there's always another teacher. The teacher is a hardwired aspect into reality. So the same way that there's always, you can't, even if you killed the Christ is always going to remanifest back into the construct.
Right.
And even if you kill evil people, the certain percentage of the population are not going to be that good. They're always going to show up. There's no way to eliminate them. It's an aspect of reality. And so the teacher is also a hardwired aspect of reality. So if we ask reality, listen, I need a teacher, bring me a teacher, one will show up, because it's hardwired for all of us. So and those that are learning, we find other people like ourselves. And so it's just a natural thing to say, hey, go to my brother, whether in the flesh or in the spirit, and he'll help you out.
Yeah, good point.
He did the same thing. In the scriptures, he did the same thing for when he was on the stake, and he made arrangements for his mother to be taken care of.
So going to verse 13, Ieshua said to his disciples, "What am I like for you? To what would you compare me?" Simon Peter said, "You are like a righteous angel." Matthew said, "You are like a wise philosopher." Thomas said, "Master, my mouth could never utter what you are like." Ieshua told him, "I am no longer your master, because you have drunk and become drunken from the same bubbling source from which I spring." Then he took him aside and said 3 words to him. When Thomas returned to his companions, they questioned him, "What did Ieshua tell you?" Thomas answered, "If I told you even one of the things he said to me, you would pick up stones and throw them at me, and fire would come out of those stones and consume you."
This is good.
So, told you 3. So read it again. So he said, how would you describe me? Simon Peter said, "You're like a righteous angel." Matthew, "You're a wise philosopher." Thomas said, "Master, I couldn't say what you're like." And he said, you've drunk and become drunken from the same bubbling source from which I spring. So alluding to the Christic nature within him as well. Then he took him aside and he said 3 words to him. When Thomas returned to his companions, they questioned him, "What did Jesus tell you?" "If I told you even one of the things he said to me, you would pick up stones and throw them at me, and fire would come out of the stones and consume you." So, are the 3 words, "You are God"? Would those be the 3 words, or what would?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, because Jesus Christ didn't want to be our savior. Okay, he wanted us to save ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the divinity within us that saves us, not the divinity within someone else.
Right.
Because we're always surrounded by the reflection of our own nature. So in order to create a more divine environment around us, we have to become divine ourselves, right? So what's happening is that we manifested ourselves as pure man. Okay, the man is perfect. There's nothing you can do to improve man. He is manifested into this world as a baby, perfect man. And the second you start putting labels on him, the second you start changing man, you make it worse. There's no way to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually part of what's going on around us with this whole transhumanist movement with science and all that. They're trying to make man better, and it's a trick because you can't make man better. Man's already perfect. All you can do is make him worse, right? Which is why they're doing it, because they want to introduce a worse condition. So Yeshua just had this whole conversation about not creating definitions, not worshiping definitions, not creating a religion, right? And now he's going to test them. This is the question. What am I? That's the test. And instead of saying, hey, you're a man, right? You're the undefinable man,
Mm-hmm.
the manifestation of the undefinable God. What did they do? They start spitting out definitions. You're an angel. You're a philosopher, right? And then Thomas says, my mouth could never utter what you are like. And what Thomas is saying is you're undefinable because you're the manifestation of the undefinable God. He got it, right?
Yep.
And then so then Jesus takes him aside.
He was like, bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. And he takes him aside and says, I'm no longer your master, right? Because if you can see me for what I truly am, reality has been revealed, and I am now naked before you,
right.
Then you are naked before yourself, and we are now equals. I am equal to Adam, and you are equal to Adam, and we're all equal to God because we all are God, right? And he said that in private, and that is horribly blasphemous to the Hebraic religion and to the Jewish religion. That is just, you cannot say you're God. And that's exactly what happened in John chapter 10, verse 31, where it says the Jews picked up stones again to stone him because they claimed that he made himself equal to God, committing blasphemy in their eyes. So even his own disciples, if he had said, listen, they all thought he was God's son. But if he had said, listen, I'm God and you can be God too. Well, even today they say, well, that's Luciferianism.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but is it right?
Yep. Yeah. Powerful 3 words.
So
you are Christ. You are God.
I am you.
I am you.
You are me.
Yeah.
We are God. That's 3 sets of 3 words. But it was more than what the other disciples could handle at that time.
Right.
Because remember, way at the beginning, he says that you're searching for it. And if you find it, you'll be disturbed.
Right.
So they had not yet gone through the transformation. So they
weren't ready.
They weren't ready. They're still worried about rules.
Right.
Should we fast now? Should we fast later?
Right.
Is it okay if I eat on a Tuesday?
Right. Yeah.
This book just keeps getting more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. So Ieshua said to them, this is verse 14, if you fast, you will be at fault. If you pray, you will be wrong. If you give to charity, you will corrupt your mind. When you go into any land and walk through the countryside, if they welcome you, eat whatever they offer you. You can heal their sick. It is not what goes into your mouth that defiles you. It is what comes out of your mouth that defiles you. So this is similar to what he described in some of the other Gospels. And essentially it's saying that if your focus is only on the sort of material or physical health, but you're not concerned with what you're saying or the thoughts that you're having or any of that, then you still will be defiled. You still will be very sick. Because it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles you. It is what comes out of your mouth that defiles you. Now, a lot of quote unquote Christians will use this as a way to say, oh yeah, look, Jesus is saying we can eat whatever the fuck we want. That's not what he's saying. It's not to just a blank check to say, I'm just going to go eat all the donuts and bacon and whatever, and I'll be fine because Jesus says that's okay.
He also connects it with what was making them sick.
Right. So, but it's also to say that hyper focusing on health, physical health purely, especially when it's used as like I'm better than you, so I can cast judgment on you because you eat that or you live that way, then you're defiled in that sense. The judgment will defile you. the way that your heart exhibits itself, that will defile you, not the things that are going into your mouth. Someone could eat trash and garbage, but if they live a life of love and compassion and care, um, versus someone who eats a pristine, you know, only fruit, fast all the time, but then they're horrible to their neighbors, they abuse their children or whatever. The one who eats the garbage is still going to be radiating at a higher spiritual essence. They won't be as defiled as the one who lives in that way, where they're constantly judging others and thinking they're better than because they eat this way or whatever. So that's what I get out of this one, which yeah. You got anything else there?
Nope, you nailed it.
Yeah. All right, so then moving on to verse 15, Ieshua said, "When you see someone who was not born from a womb, then prostrate yourselves and give worship, for this is your Father."
What this is saying is it's the flesh that comes from the womb.
Mm-hmm.
It's the spirit that's the Father. So if you see someone, if you can see their spirit and it's a true spirit, that's God. That's the divinity. And it's the divinity that we should worship, not the flesh.
Right.
And his divinity is the cause. To say the Father, he's saying the cause. This is the cause. And that's a gift, to be able to look at someone and to see beyond their flesh, but to actually see the essence of their spirit.
Mm.
And that's what you're actually interacting with. And you should show the spirit within that person respect, because that's the divinity within them. And it's the divinity that causes us, say, love and wisdom and truth and kindness. Those are the things that created us. We didn't invent that stuff. That stuff invented us.
Right.
And so we should show proper respect when we find divinity in our fellow man.
Mm.
And we should obey the divinity within them. So this is almost a continuation of who are we going to talk to when you're gone? Well, first he says, go to my brother. And then he says, if you meet someone and you see the divine within them, to give worship, which means to obey, because that's the teacher.
Right.
And the verse before, he's continuing the conversation. Not that, because fasting and praying and giving to charity, well, that's the very definition of the true faith. You know, what is the true faith? Well, to take care of orphans and widows, right? But he's saying that the definition of these things is less than true divinity.
Right. Right.
And so you might meet someone that is not following the definition of your tradition. You know, they might not be a Christian. You might meet someone and maybe they're Muslim, maybe they're a Jew, maybe they're something else. But if you look inside them and you see the Father within them, if you see that teacher, well, then they have something to teach you. And are you going to pass up? It's so rare to meet someone that's actually divine. I mean, you don't meet these people every day. You can go quite a minute before you meet another truly divine person.
Mm-hmm.
And are you really going to reject the Father because of the form that he came to you?
Right.
I mean, he might come to you as a woman, a man, a child, an adult, an animal. He might come to you as a ray of sunshine flickering across the sky. So we have to learn to see beyond with fleshly eyes and to recognize the Father in whatever form he comes to us.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like when he said in verse 5, recognize what is in front of you, and what is hidden from you will be revealed. There's nothing hidden that will not be revealed, because if we're paying attention to what's in front of us, then the divine is always going to be entering in some way, whether it's through a sign, a symbol, an individual, a conversation, a song, however, that's the immaterial form, the energetic way that the Father is going to show up as that divine nudge to lead you in that right direction, to keep you going on that path. So
this document that we're reading really reveals the Apostle Paul as an apostate.
yep,
He took the pure teachings of Christ and just made a hard left turn,
yep,
and just butchered the beautiful teachings.
yep. Yep. So verse 16, it says, Yeshua said, people may think that I have come to bring peace to the world. They do not know that I have come to sow division upon the earth, fire, sword, war. When there are 5 in a house, 3 will be against 2, and 2 against 3, father against son, and son against father, and they will stand, and they will be alone and simple. Monachos.
It's a Greek word it's a Coptic word with no direct translation in English, I think.
Well, mono, so one single
or solitary.
So,
that's where you get the word monk.
Yep.
Because a monk is alone in a monastery.
So this is another thing that's referenced in the other Gospels, and it's often a confusing point for literalist Christians to view this, because they're presented by the church as this, love and light, pacifist Jesus figure that's just like, oh yeah, just turn the other cheek and let people screw you over, and don't worry about anything, and don't judge anybody else, and all these different things to encourage this pacifist idea. But then they read a verse like this where it's like, why is Jesus talking about he's coming to bring division? Why is there focus on dividing? I thought we're supposed to be unifying under God. And it's like, because they don't see the true purpose of somebody who stands in truth and what that does. He said it in the very beginning of this text, how when you start to seek, it becomes disturbing what you see, or disturbing the redirect, and that is that Christed essence. When we allow that energy to start to permeate our life, then all that is false falls away. And so if we're living in a reality where it's split between truth and lies, then there has to be a divide, and the lies have to be divided away. And that's exactly what the Christic force does. And so that's what he comes to bring.
If you are a Christic force and the Father is speaking through you, you're going to be speaking truth.
Yep.
And truth is offensive to those that live in falsehood.
Yep.
And if you are a force for goodness, you're going to be acting contrary to those that are acting against goodness. And so to be a Christic figure is to be a warrior, a spiritual warrior primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And you're waging war against the darkness, and by speaking truth. And the reason why I'm saying is primarily by speaking truth, because just 2 verses before, he was saying it was what comes out of your mouth is what defiles you. So we're standing in a privileged position as speakers of truth in a defiled world, mm-hmm. in which people are speaking falsehood.
Yep. And he says it here: fire, sword, war. That's to me brings up images of like Archangel Michael and the flaming sword of truth, because this is that's the sword that we wield when we do speak the truth. And we do need to be conscious of what that sword can do and wield it responsibly. It's not something to be flippant or careless with, but do know that if you are truly dedicated to stepping onto this path, this Christic path, you are going to become an extremely polarizing figure. There's no getting around that part, when especially living in a reality that's dominated by the lie. you're going to be extremely polarizing. But regardless, because the Christic energy is always on the cutting edge of society, the cutting edge of the collective consciousness. So it's always driving consciousness forward. And the masses, the majority of the consciousness, always gets complacent. It always gets kind of lazy. It resists change. It's still bound by the collective ego when the ego doesn't really want to change. So whenever a Christic figure steps in and embodies that flaming sword of truth to say, hey, what you guys are doing is still part of that lie, well, that's immediately met by disdain by anyone who still wants to hold on to the lie. And so just saying that is something we need to, if we are truly aligned with embodying that Christic energy, be prepared for becoming a polarizing figure, because it's what this energy does.
At some point, he's also saying that someone is going to have to take the ground, that someone is going to have to exercise force, because it's one thing to speak words, but saying stop doesn't stop a rapist. You know, at some point, someone has to defend the weak, someone has to defend the women, someone has to defend the children, and the word monogos, you know, almost has to do with like a warrior monk sort of thing. And so, and if you're just going to speak words, but you're not going to be a force for goodness, if you're not going to defend the orphans, you're not going to defend the widows, then what's the point of speaking the words?
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's good to exercise your First Amendment rights, but after the First Amendment comes the Second. You know, at some point, if they don't stop molesting the children, who's going to physically make them stop molesting the children? And that's why I could see why the early Catholic Church would not want people to read this, because the predators do not want men to stand up in defense of women and children.
Right.
They want, and especially in the context, because Jesus Christ, this was originally a conversation about rules. Are the rules beneath you, or are they above you? Are the rules, you know, a personal code that you use in service to goodness, or are you worshiping laws? And so he ends it with, I didn't come to make peace on the world. I came to sow division. And then he's pretty specific: fire, sword, and war. That's pretty specific.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so at some point, are you just going to let forces of darkness come in and butcher your children and rape your wife and your kids? And because that's what darkness will do.
Yep. These are not the words of a weak pacifist.
No, Jesus was not a pacifist. No, he was a warrior.
So, verse 17, Ieshua said, I will give you that which no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no hand has touched, no human heart has conceived. So, I will give you that which no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no hand has touched, and no human heart has conceived.
The absolute.
Yeah.
He's offering them the absolute,
right?
Which Thomas has figured out. The others have not yet figured out.
Beginning to broach, yeah.
Because there's no way to say, like, the word absolute is not absolute in of itself.
Yep.
Like the word dog is not actually a dog. And so he's saying, in however many ways he can say, he's trying to point to what he's talking about. But they have to make that leap.
Yep.
Thomas made the leap. The rest didn't make the leap yet.
Yep.
Which you can tell because because the next question they ask shows that they still haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
But it's reasonable why they would ask this question, because he just pulled the trigger. He says, listen, we're going to have to go to war, fire, sword. So he just pulled the trigger. Now he's the master, they're the servants, they're going to have to obey, right? So now the next question that they ask shows that, well, they're concerned about that because he's about to send them into war. So now they want to know how it ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so verse 17 is all about it's immaterial. It's the absolute, as Sarth put it. And it's verse 17, which is a powerful number.
Which it's so he's giving them a weapon. Because the verse before, he says that you may have to stand alone as a monk.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to be all by yourself, standing, even divided against people that you care about, for truth and for goodness.
The straight and narrow is very narrow.
Right. And then as a consolation, says, yes, you're going to be alone, but the absolute is going to be with you. And then they ask, well, how's it end?
Still focused on the physical.
Still focused on that. Yeah.
So verse 18, the disciples asked Ieshua, tell us what will be our end. Ieshua answered, what do you know of the beginning, so that you now seek the end? Where the beginning is, the end will also be. Blessed are those who abide in the beginning, for they will know the end and will not taste death. So he's asking, why are you playing these games of beginnings and ends? Why are you playing these time-based reality ideals? Come back to who you truly are, which is timeless. You were there. You've always been there. You will always be there. So he's trying to invite them back into that, but of course they're still focused on that. And the disciples play a very beautiful role in the dialogue between Christ and them, because it gives us that they embody that egoic, that lower self that's yearning to discover and yearning to do better, but still struggling with these higher spiritual ideals. And go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really powerful verse. So he says where the beginning is, the end will also be. So this is also not just about people, but this is about most ideas. The destination of the idea is almost always also its origin. So if an idea begins with goodness, it has to end with goodness. If it begins with truth, it'll end in truth. And so when you look at the life cycle of a human, where were they before they were born, before they passed through the portal between their mother's legs into this world? Where were they? Well, wherever they were before they existed will be where they ended up when they die, because your destination has to be your source.
Mm-hmm.
And what were you? Well, you were God before you came here, because there isn't anything else to be.
Right.
And so this is another powerful weapon that he's giving us. So yes, we're going to have to fight for what is good, and we're going to have to fight for what is true, first with our words, and hopefully our words will be enough. However, if it comes to force, we have the absolute that cannot possibly be defined, cannot possibly be touched, and no, it's beyond human hearts, and that is standing beside with us. And furthermore, even if we die in service to goodness, we'll just end up where we started. So death is not something to be feared, and we should be willing to go forward into battle for goodness, because death is not something that can stop us.
Yeah. That's why the Druze were known as the most powerful warriors, because they knew that death was no end. So when they fought, they only fought for just and righteous causes, but they fought with tenacity that no warriors had ever seen before.
You couldn't make them compromise.
Right. There was no capitulation. Because if they were fighting a war, then you were evil. They didn't enter wars unless there was some great reason to. So that they had that.
But people today, they're so terrified of death, and so. And they're so terrified of their loved ones dying, and it's the ultimate leverage, and they make so many compromises just trying to hold on to one more minute of life.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand that the difference between life and death is completely illusionary. Neither one of those states truly exist. There's just who and what you are.
Yep. Yeah. Lila, did you have something, or was that just a mic flipping open? Must have just been an accident. All right. So moving to the next verse. And verse 19 says, Ieshua said, Blessed is the one who is before existing. If you become my disciples and listen to my words, these stones will serve you. In paradise there are 5 trees that do not change from summer to winter. Their leaves do not fall. Whoever knows them will not taste death. So here's another little riddle for us. Blessed is the one who is before existing. If you become my disciples and listen to my words, these stones will serve you. In paradise there are 5 trees that do not change from summer to winter. Their leaves do not fall. Whoever knows them will not taste death. So, in paradise there are 5 trees that do not change from summer to winter. So 5 is often the number for the crucifixion, crossing the fiction, because it represents the 5-pointed star, or the 5 points of man. There's also the 5, as in the 5 in-body chakras from the throat down. So this is what perhaps he's alluding to with this: these leaves never change, that the leaves never change from summer to winter, as in they have transmuted the death cycle, the death process. So if it's the 5 physical, and these 5 trees, as in the 5 lower chakras, do not change from summer to winter, as in the life or death portion of the journey, then those trees or those energy centers have become immortal, and therefore the man or woman using those energy centers has done so as well. So that's some possible meanings from that. If you become my disciples and listen to my words, these stones will serve you. And blessed is the one who is before existing. So again, kind of repeating what he was alluding to in the previous verse, that we are timeless. So blessed is the one who is before existing. So if you identify with this one lifetime, or this one body, or this idea of finite limitations, then we will not be blessed. But as soon as you step outside of the time-bound constraints, then you become blessed. Yeah. So that's what I see within this verse. What you got?
So in ancient Christic thinking, trees, like a large tree of righteousness, they would say, well, are you a big strong tree in the Christian congregation? It has to do with your character, what sort of person that you are. So there's 5 types of trees in Christic thought. There's the person that's seeking. Okay, trees, because what do trees do? Trees reach up, right? They put down roots, and they get solid, and they reach up. And then even if you're a car and you hit a tree, I mean, you'll smash your hood and fold your car around the tree, but the tree doesn't budge, right? Because it's a firm tree. So there's the seeker. That's the first tree. The second is the believer. Okay, so you were seeking, and you found it, and now you believe. But your belief has not yet been fleshed out. So now you need to learn. So the learner is the 3rd type of tree. The 4th type is now you've learned it. So now you can apply it. And the way that you apply it is through service of goodness and service of others. And so now you're the server. And then the last type of tree is someone who's a leader, where now you're not just serving others, but you're teaching others. And so there's these 5 types of trees within the body of Christ that exist in paradise.
And those would also correspond with the 5 in-body chakras as well, because you've got the seeker at the lowest, sort of building that foundation, and then it moves up. I mean, you've got the learner as the solar plexus, which is that initiative driving force for action. The server is at the heart chakra, so that's going to be that unconditional love, and then the leader expressing through the voice, the throat chakra, what that is as well. So
right, and
yeah, that fits.
and the reason why these trees would lead you to eternal life is because the truth that you're learning is how to transcend death and transcend yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and recognize yourself for what you are as the eternal self. You
Right.
recognize yourself. Oh, I'm divine. I'm God because I'm good, and good is God. And if I'm good, I must be God.
Right.
And then what happens is, where's the comment about the stones?
At the beginning.
The beginning.
No, it's right there. It's like second, third,
Right.
fourth line.
Okay. So he says, blessed is the one who is before existing. Okay, so that's a continuation of the thought before about knowing your origins. Okay, so if you realize that you were before you existed, then you'll recognize that you will be after you stop existing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you transcend existence. So once you recognize that part, then what happens is that the stones represent the physical construct of reality. Then everything that's physical around you, everything that you can see around you serves you because you recognize yourself as God, and that your words create, and then you speak the words that manifest all around you. And then around you, you're going to see people, and you're going to say, well, is this person a believer? Is he a learner? Is he a seeker? And that's how you're going to define the people around you. And that these five modes of operation, of stages of spiritual growth, you'll see people around you. So I see Justin. Well, he's a leader, right? And he's a teacher, and he's also a learner, and he's also a believer, and he's also a seeker. So he's each of these things, and so am I, right? And everyone around us that falls into the body of Christ that are actually in paradise are one of these things, or all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are others, and they don't walk in paradise, right? Because they're not looking. And not only they're not looking, but they don't believe, and they're not learning, and they're not serving Christ, and they're not leading in Christ, and they're in hell, right? So whoever knows this, well, they know this because they're beyond death. They're beyond life and death. They're beyond the beginning and the end. They know.
Yeah.
But the disciples, they were still asking. They're still trying to establish religion. They don't understand yet, but they're still seeking.
Right.
So they're on the way to transcending death because they're seeking.
Right.
But because they don't know it yet, they haven't found it yet, they can't yet believe in it because they're not there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want these to run too long, so I think that's good for reading the Gospel of Thomas today. Just wanted to check in real quickly. Were there any questions or things anybody wanted to say before we wrap up? If not, no worries. I know it's a lot to digest and take in, and we're gonna keep doing these. I mean, I'm really enjoying this, and yeah. So if you have any questions, if you're listening to the recording and want to ask about anything or talk about anything, feel free to reach out. I see Jill just raised your hand. Go ahead. Jill, did you want to share something?
Oh, I was
I was
talking
talking
and
and I forgot
the
to hit
button.
the button.
Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Roseanne, for letting me
Roseanne, for
know
letting
this
me
was
know this
going
was
on.
going on.
I missed the beginning, actually. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, good,
I
good,
think
good.
you might be having some connection issues. I think there's a lag. So just go ahead with your question or anything you
Okay.
want to share. Yeah, we're not hearing anything, Jill. I'm not sure if you're having connection issues or what's going on there.
Her mic's off.
It says it's on. No, it's off. It says your mic's open, but we're not hearing anything. So, not sure.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything on this end too. While that's getting figured out, maybe just leave and come back, Jill. But I just wanted to say thanks so much to you guys. This has what I've been able to hear. I was in the DMV, so it was a little off and on, but what I was able to hear was super insightful and interesting, and I really appreciate these talks that you're doing. Looking forward to more. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lila. It's been fun to do, and we'll definitely keep it up. So yeah, I see Jill's back in here. Did you want to try again?
All right. How about that?
We can hear you.
Oh, yay. Okay. Hello, everyone. So getting back to when Darth, when you both were speaking about the 7-day-old infant and how different an infant is in this matrix society, and going further back even than the pure, because of the generational trauma. I'm thinking of the lower chakras being, formed in utero, and these children taking in, what the mother's feeling, essentially. Like, that's what I was taught, or that's what I feel like I learned over the time with the chakra and Reiki work. So how different that is, to be pure and not come in with all the junk. So that's where we need a childlike. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jesus talks in other writings how, only through the eyes of a child will we enter the kingdom of heaven, and that's why in this writing it gives the example to look to the child for guidance, because they're the closest form of that purity that we are sort of trying to find our way back to, even though we're not finding our way to it. We are that. So it's just remembering who we truly are. But they're a great reminder of that pure innocence and sense of wonder and joy and bliss. And that's what this experience is really about. So yeah, good point there. Yeah. Anybody else got anything they want to share? Or if not, we can go ahead and start wrapping up. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Justin Carpenter. And the other one who I don't know your name. Can you hear me well?
Hear you?
Yeah, I prepared at least 2 questions during this live stream. Something that has been a lot on my mind. It's about words in the Bible, and when people do prayers, it's one specific word. The word is Lord. I have a confusion what means Lord, because when I listened today a pastor on another live stream, he was making prayers in the live stream saying, addressing Lord, Lord God, God, Heavenly Father, and going back and forth. In the end, ending up into God and Heavenly Father. So in the Bible, it's written Lord God. So I would like to know the truth about what means Lord and what means Lord God. I have no confusion what is God and Heavenly Father, but I have confusion what is Lord and Lord God. That is my question.
Yeah, great question. I would say just simply, Lord implies it's like giving homage to the the sort of step down away from the oneness that we've fallen. And so the Lord is like that Christic influence that not stands between us, but it's for us to embody in order to reunify with that creator essence. So it's Lord over this experience, and that it all came from the Christic energy, and therefore it goes all back through the Christic energy, well, except for the anti-Christic energy. That's really all part of the same. But I'd say Lord is sort of just an homage to that that energetic hierarchy. Not that there's one necessarily better or worse, but it's just helpful to frame in that way so we can get our orientation correct. That's all. That's just kind of first thoughts on that. I see Darth as, and this is Darth Phaedrus, by the way. We do a bunch of shows together, and yeah. So what did you find on Lord?
So the word Lord has to do, because it comes from the pre-Christian Babylonian Canaanite area, and it has to do with the burning of bread and the sacrifice that you would make when you're trying to commune with the divine self. So the idea is that they would want to share a meal with the divine essence, and so you would show up in the temple with your bread offering, and then that would be left there to be eaten by the divine essence or by the priests of the divine. And so that was where the original word, that's the original word Lord, but it's also associated with master, the master of whatever force that you were appealing to. So, an ancient person might go to burn incense for a fertility goddess or a weather god or a warrior god or whatever house they were going to, because before there was monotheism, they worshiped many gods. There was usually a chief god that was not that big of a deal, because people were generally appealing toward a specific force. So they would go to the temple of whatever specific force they were trying to appeal toward, whether crops or whether they were having sickness or illness, and they would have a meal with the god there. And so it's closely associated with that sort of ideal. But eventually it just meant, as the ages passed, the word got transferred from one culture to another, from one religion to another, and then eventually it just meant master or whoever was above you. So now, now in this culture or modern Western culture, you might have like in the British government, you might have like the Lord of Commons or the Lord of this or the Lord of that. It's a title showing authority. So in the Bible, it's used to show that this person is above. So God is above, but you might refer it also as, Lord God or Lord Yahweh or however they're using it, and if the king is above you, so he's also a Lord. And in the scriptures, Jesus Christ even said that judges were considered lords, or they were also considered gods, because the judge would have life and death over you. If you were guilty, the judge could have you put to death, or the king could have you put to death if he found you guilty. So in that sense, he was also a Lord, having a divine essence of causing life or death. So that's what lordship has to do. It has to do with life and death and authority and being the cause, being able to judge.
When even just a quick note about master and the word master. So we have a lot of words that are derivatives of star, because we are stars. We are light manifest physically. We are fallen stars. So master, 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 mother, and then star. So the mother star. So and the mother represents the physical earth, Mother Earth. So a master is a physical star, or a star on the physical plane. So one who has manifested or realized their true form as a star while simultaneously physical would be a master in the phonetic way of breaking down that word.
And in the Old English language, it also has to do with someone that is a provider of bread, or the keeper of bread.
Lord.
Yeah, or the one who distributes bread, or the portion. Who's going to get what portion? But that's just in the English culture.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. I mean, I haven't read the whole Bible, but what also bothers me is that very often there's spoken about idolatry, icons, statues, like, and if someone is praying to, let's say, an icon, praying to idolatry to ask money, then without really just asking for the money and using it for wrong purpose, then I don't know, to hurt children, then I think that's wrong. If using prayer in that specific form, I don't think that's Heavenly Father anymore. They're praying too. I think that is the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, right? Idolatry is a big part of the house. That's how you. That's the whole point of religion.
Your mic quality has changed to worse.
Yeah. So if you
better.
If you mute yourself, it should be better.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. So the what I was saying is the aim of religion is to create a continuous stream of false idols to worship and to always be, because they can't forcefully take us away from our connection to God. But if we believe through all of this witchcraft that religions put forward, then all of a sudden we are continuously putting one idol or another in between us and our Heavenly Father, our connection to Source. So it's a very devious plan to encourage that.
I do want to introduce the idea that God is the only thing that exists, the absolute self, the absolute source. And then everything is just an appearance, a vision of God or an aspect of God. So you're saying that, if someone's motive is wrong, then it's not a prayer. But I would submit the idea that there's no one else to talk to, because God is the only person that exists. He just exists in many different forms and places and times all at the same time.
Right.
So, and that's exactly what we were talking about, what the Gospel of Thomas is all about, is that I'm God and you're God and he's God, and and the rabbit, bouncing across the stream, that's or the river or the pasture, that's God too, and the birds in the sky, that's everything is God, because God is the only thing that exists, and that God is within you. So there's no way for you to speak without God hearing you, because God is within you, because that's who you are, because there's no one else to be. So if you're speaking and your words are not creating reality, then that must mean that you're disagreeing with yourself.
Yeah, energetically, you're not aligned.
Correct. So you're saying, I need money for the children. I need money for this. I need money for that. If you were truly in touch with your own inner divinity, and if you were in agreement with yourself, then it would have to happen. But if it's not happening, somehow, somewhere within yourself, you are disagreeing with yourself.
Right.
And that's why it's not manifesting.
And that's why mainstream religions teach prayer in this sort of inefficient way,
to separate you from yourself, to make you think that you have to talk to someone other than yourself, and that maybe that person that's other than yourself isn't going to do it.
Right.
They're stealing your power to give it to something else. And so this vision of God that you think is other than yourself is itself an idol, because the only thing that is God is the God within you.
Yep.
It can't be any other way. And if you are truly unified with the God within you, then the stones themselves would have to do your bidding.
Mm-hmm.
And then there would be no poverty. How could there be? It would be impossible. The very construct of reality would have to do your will, which is the way that it worked for Christ, because he was in touch with the God within him,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew who and what he was. And so he could walk on water and turn water into wine. And today, today we're not concerned with walking on water, but we're concerned with keeping the lights on. And we're concerned with keeping food on the table and keeping ourselves safe. These are the issues we're concerned with. And the solution to those problems is finding the divinity within. It's the same solution to every problem.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question on that. In the book of Thomas, there was, if you pray, you will be wrong. What does it mean, if you pray, you will be wrong? What does that mean? Could you explain me that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it says if you fast, you'll be wrong. If you pray, you'll be wrong. So it's like, wait, hold on. I thought we were supposed to be doing these things. What he's doing is he's breaking down the religious defining of these practices. He's saying you don't do that just because tradition demands you do it, or because some man has set some rules or written some protocol or whatever. If you're not embodying this, if you're fasting and it's bringing you to a state of elevation and allowing you to refine your connection to yourself, then that fasting is a beautiful thing. If you're fasting because somebody else told you you have to fast or you won't be well, or you have this religious protocol that if I don't fast or if I don't pray on these times and in this exact way, then I'm going to go to hell and I will be wrong, then that's a contradiction. So energetically, you're contradicting yourself. So he's stripping away the attachment to the dogmatic and institutionalized program defining how to pray and when to pray and how to fast and when, all of that in any way. And he's going at the most sort of seemingly foundational teachings of these religious institutions, because that's what the disciples are going to know, and that's what's going to be the most shocking for them, to be like, what? Well, holy smokes, like we thought we were starting a new religion or whatever, and all of a sudden he's saying, no, do not set any definitions, don't put this in any box or any which way, and if you're doing it for that purpose, then you're missing the point here. So it's it was a little tricky to see it right off the bat, but you can see when you start to see the overall message and read it as a whole, you see that he's at each point conflicting with the status quo, the program at the time.
The way that it works, see, God cannot be defined. God is the thing that defines everything else. And so any religion or any definition that you make would automatically fall short of the divine perfection. And because it originates upon a false assumption, it originates out of a untruth, the destination would also have to be untruth. And that's why religions always just make things worse, because they're starting off of a false premise. So the solution is to understand that whatever tradition you're using, and you have to use a tradition, otherwise you can't function in this construct, right? Whatever tradition you're using, the secret is to understand that it is falling short of the divine perfection. However, if you act in good faith, then on the other side of reality, the divinity makes up the difference. So even though you're using an imperfect tradition, because you're acting with a perfect faith, then you can have a perfect outcome.
Right.
It's like an artist. The artist is using an imperfect painting brush. The brush has defects. The paper has defects. His hands have defects. Everything has defects. And yet he can come out with a perfect masterpiece because he's having a spiritual interaction. He's operating out of his originating is not out of the hands. The originating is not out of the material. The originating is in the heart, and the heart is perfect.
Right.
The spirit is perfect. Therefore, the end result has to be perfect. So when you're praying, it's not, should I pray on my knees? Should I pray standing up? Should I pray with my eyes closed? No, you should pray out of faith. Faith that the divinity is within you. Faith that you are God's child. Faith that God is watching everything that you do and say out of your own eyes and out of your own ears and out of your own hands and out of your own heart, because there's nobody else that you could possibly be. So if you have perfect faith, even if the prayer is defective, it's not about the prayer. It's about the origin, and the origin's out of your heart. So always pray out of your heart.
Yeah, and it's like that's what he was referring to with, as you picked up on, with the whole consuming the lion and letting the lion consume man. So if the lion is the tool, if prayer is the tool, and we're using prayer for that aim, not because it's some dogmatic prescribed thing that we feel like we have to do, then that can be a tool for our elevation. But if that prayer becomes something that, oh no, I was told I have to do this, then all of a sudden the lion is consuming you, and you're becoming that program. You're becoming, this is an inside out reality. We're inside projecting out. And if we view reality in the inversion of everything outside as if is changing me internally, then you're lost, and you'll always be controlled by whoever recognizes.
Right. If you're trying to make a map of reality, but you're starting with Earth, you can't make an accurate map of heaven starting from Earth. However, you can create an accurate map of the world if you start from heaven, because heaven is the truth of the matter. So there's a way that reality unfolds around us. So you start with I am. Because I am, I will. I have a will. Because I have a will, I can act. Because I have acted, now I have feelings about the way that I acted. Because I have feelings, now I can speak. Because I have spoken, so all of that before was just internal. You were acting internal. Now I have spoken, and that creates the external world. So I feel, now I speak. Because I speak, there's an external world, now I see. And because I can see, now I know what I see. So I feel, I am, I will, I do, I feel, I speak, I see, and I know. And then the reverse of that is I know what I see what I speak what I feel what I do what I will, and I will what I am. And if those 7 elements are in unity, then it has to happen. So those 7 prayers, those 7 levels, all have to be one thing. But can you imagine if you feel something different than you speak? Then what's going to manifest? If you're trying to say a prayer, well, first of all, you have to recognize that there's no one else there but you. There's no one else there but God. God is both the speaker and he's also the hearer. But what if you're disagreeing with yourself? You're saying, I'm not afraid, but inside you feel fear. Well, what's going to happen? You have to be unified. You have to agree with yourself. And if you do that in good faith, then it doesn't matter what language you're speaking in. It doesn't matter what time you're speaking in. None of that matters. You just have to be in good. It's just faith at every level.
So, thank you so much. So basically, what you said is, if you fast, you're wrong. In summarize. No. Okay. Let me ask the question that I prepared. Shasti, you said you read from your document that fasting. I mean, you spoke that fasting means lying, as in stop fasting, stop lying, therefore do not lie. That those weren't the exact words. That's my interpretation. That fasting is, yeah.
Let me clarify, because you lion and lion. I was referencing the passage where, and I'll just pull it up real quickly just so we can read it exactly. So in the document, he said, fortunate is the lion eaten by a human, for lion becomes human. Unfortunate is the human eaten by a lion, for human becomes lion. So if you, in this verse, if you replace lion with a dogmatic view of prayer, or prayer in general. So if the lion is eaten by a human, the lion becomes human. This lion is embodied by this essence of man to be used for a higher ideal, or higher way. So prayer is a tool that's utilized. But unfortunate is the human eaten by a lion. So if this prayer, or this idea of prayer, whether told by a church or whatever sort of dogmatic view, eats the human, if that's the dominating force, the human is no longer the sovereign. The human is no longer stepping in as that source of divinity. The human is living by another's program. So if another's program is dictating it, then that human becomes the program.
Religion has to serve people. People do not serve religions. See, you cannot put religion above man. Whatever religion that it is that you're using, whatever spiritual tradition that you're using, it is not greater than you. It has to serve you. So if you're going to, whatever definition that you're using, if you're going to say it's an absolute good, well, then that's false. Because goodness cannot be defined. There is no such thing as an absolutely true religion. Because God is above religion. God cannot be contained by a religion. So if you're saying I have to pray this way, or I have to fast this way, if you're saying the only way to fast is on Friday, well, that's wrong. Because it has to be in good faith. If you're going to fast, make sure you're doing it out of faith, because it is the faith that makes the fasting true or not. If you're fasting and you think just because you're fasting, well, now you're good and you're righteous. Well, it's not fasting. Fasting doesn't make you good. Goodness makes you good. And it's goodness that makes the fasting good. There's an order of importance here. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. As I mentioned previously when I was here last time, that since August last year, I was unhealthy, and I fasted for 63 days or 2 months and a day or two, but 63 days, and and I became healthier. However, there was a spiritual and physical transformation, and after that, I also received teachings that I need to use language more correctly, more precisely, and then at some point, I think this year, I just simply tried to become like an absolute in terms of not lying at all. So if I don't want to answer a question, I say nothing. And if someone is someone doesn't deserve an answer, I can speak in a different way. However, I really try to avoid lying, and I no longer fast. I eat every day, and I try as hard as I can not to lie. So I do not fast anymore, and I also do not lie anymore, but it's not like an absolute, like, I try to do it as good as possible. So I think I get what's in the Gospel of Matthew and what you're saying. So I think I have clarity now on everything.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Great questions.
Sounds to me like you're doing it right.
Yeah,
That you're doing it in good faith.
absolutely. Yeah, there's
Thank
nothing
you.
wrong. There's nothing wrong with fasting. Fasting is an incredible tool to help with so many things. And fasting in and of itself is trusting that God gave you a perfect vehicle, a perfect vessel that takes care of itself, and all we have to do is get out of its way. I mean, that's a huge act of faith and trust, and knowing that you are connected to God and this conscious energy that's moving through everything. But what he's just saying there in that passage is that we just don't fall into the dogma. No matter what the dogma says, the dogma could be saying the most beautiful, righteous oriented thing, but as soon as you start to define goodness and you start to have all of these rules and regulations, and then that creates more division between groups, and people go to war because of their interpretation over these rules and dogma. And, oh no, my religion says we're supposed to fast for 3 days, and mine says we're supposed to fast for 5 days, and yada yada yada, and all of that's taken away from the point, which is, yes, fasting is a great thing, but don't let dogma, don't let the program take you away from the simplicity of what it truly is. And that's what he's trying to do, is get these very religious oriented disciples away from this dogmatic ideas that everything that I do has to be defined in some book or by some religious teacher to tell me everything. No, I need to step back in as the king or queen of my own domain, and step into that. So great questions. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't fast because of religious reasons. I just wanted to be healthier. Simple as that.
Yeah, you trusted the divine to lead you. You were casting your net and catching lots of fish, and you distinguished the one large fish that was God sending you the message to, like, hey, it's time to kick your health into high gear, and fasting is a very effective tool to do that. So you were acting exactly as you need to, and not letting some. Yes, so perfect.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Bravo.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Yeah, anybody else want to jump in before we conclude today's episode of going through lost biblical text?
I'm so happy we did this.
Yeah, me too.
This was a great idea. This was a great selection for our first text.
It's been on my mind for a while to do this. That fish has been flopping in my consciousness for a bit, and I'm glad to finally put it out there. So yeah, we'll keep doing these. But yeah, I'll take that as a good sign that we covered all that we needed to today on these passages. So we'll pick up next. I'll try and do it at the same time. I'll do an announcement next week, but this evening is a good time period to do it. So we'll pick up again, I believe, on verse 19. Yeah, so we'll start verse 19 next week. So look forward to that. And yeah, just we'll see you guys in the other shows that we're doing. So we got another Quest Ion Q&A open discussion tomorrow. That's every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Feel free to join us for that. If you have any questions or want to bring up any topics on anything, no restrictions, all topics welcome. And then Friday we'll be doing another watch party. I'm not sure which movie we'll be doing, but stay tuned for that announcement. And then hopefully Sunday we'll have the next iteration. We weren't able to get the time. Well, I say we. Darth wasn't able to get the time to put the finishing touches on the next part of the religious agenda.
Definitely this Sunday.
So he's saying definitely this Sunday for the next iteration of that. So it's very much in alignment with this conversation as well. So it does fit well together. So look forward to that. And yeah, I think that's it for now. So thanks. Did you have any closing comments or
Nope.
anything else? All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are. We love you guys so very much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.